It's here. Alright, man. So, what's good, y'all? For the recording, in the infinity is like defending egoism and shit, and I'm just like attacking and like seeing what the view is and shit. So, like, yeah, we can start, bro.
Yeah, so just to clarify, it's me versus Free. The judge is going to be Yo Time. That's the official judge that both of us agreed to. He's going to be debating from our seat, meaning that we have to set up a wager. Additionally, I'm going to be just proposing my normative ethical view, and he's going to be attempting to give a reductio towards it after questioning it a little bit to get an understanding of it. But look, so obviously on my end, you get my seat if I lose in some impossible world. So what do I get if you win? Or I apologize if I win.
What you get if you win? I don't know, bro.
Yup.
What you want?
With Nitro? I want Nitro.
Nitro?
Nitro?
Oh
Yup.
my. I don't have nitro, bro. I just gave the nitro. Oh
Okay, what do you
man,
have?
I don't know. I didn't know. I didn't know we were like raising stakes and shit.
Yeah, that's how it works in the server. If you want my CD, you have to wait or something.
Hmm. I don't know. Like, what can I give you outside of nitro, man? Like, I don't even know.
What do you have? Like,
Do you want like? I don't have like dollars and shit. I don't work in that currency and shit. I don't know. I don't know what can give you, God. Like, I don't know.
fucking okay, time. Do you have any like proposals or so? Do you have Robux?
Roblox, bro. I haven't played Roblox in like minute. I don't, bro.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
bro. uh, you have to give me your Roblox, or you have to give me your Discord account.
My Discord
Bro.
account.
Yeah.
This one, bro. This one
Yup.
been old.
Yep. You have
Hmm.
to give me that one.
Damn. Oh man. Oh, I'm not too sure though. Because,
Okay,
bro, I
bro.
have a
Like,
lot of
what do you
friends.
have? Like, okay, look, bro.
I
You
can
just
make
have
you an
to.
account, bro. I can make you an account with like a lot of people in it, but like I cannot give you this
No.
one though.
But look, okay, so we can disagree. You can like I guess join my syndicate, dick ride me whenever you're in chat when I'm debating or some shit. Are you fine with that?
I can do that. I can do that, bro. Sure.
Okay. Okay. I bet. Okay, so look, the wager, meaning the success of the wager on which end is obviously going to be determined off of the judgment. And yeah, so I'm gonna have to hold my end of the deal up. I'm gonna hope that you hold your end of the deal up. And we can just start, man.
Hey, baby, for sure, man.
Yeah, so it's simple. I'm just an individual, rational, ethical egoist. I just believe that the morality of actions are determined off of the individual's self-interest, the individual being the person who's acting or performing the action. I believe that most actions, meaning ethical egoism is not restricted to, but I believe that most actions are analytically determined off of how much pleasure you're going to be granted from the action.
Okay.
In translation, I believe people possess, or at least attempt to possess, a self-interest in which would ultimately grant them as much pleasure as possible. Obviously, restricted to their capacity, and yeah, pleasure and/or benefit. But glad
All right, baby.
I believe
So
it's intuitively
self-interest is
consistent.
something that.
I apologize.
All right, baby, for sure. No worries. So like, I assume that the pleasure and like the thing we have to underline is the self-interest, right?
Well, the pleasure is independent of the self-interest, but by self-interest, I just mean a personal will, a personal desire, our person's interest. Simple.
Yeah. Sure. I grant that. So like, I grant that that definition is okay. So like, then answer me this: if it benefited you for like you killed like five people and it grants you like great pleasure. You'd like to say you're a fucking like psychopath and shit. I don't know. And you kill like five people. That's like giving you like a hella pleasure. You know what I'm saying? Like five people are dead. Do you think like that's something which is like morally permissible, even morally good because if it gives you pleasure?
Okay, look, I don't think you listen to the position. So the position isn't saying that I'm maximizing pleasure. Therefore, whatever action I'm performing to maximize pleasure is okay. The position says that whatever self-interest I possess, if I'm acting upon that self-interest, it's moral to do so. Now, I can have a self-interest independent of pleasure. I can have pleasure independent of a self-interest. So let's say I gain pleasure from killing. Does it mean it's in my self-interest to kill? No. Let's say I have the self-interest to kill. Doesn't mean that I gain pleasure from killing? No. So these things do not have to have an identity relation, specifically also a causal relation. It's just the case that I can have a self-interest that leads into pleasure, or I can have a self-interest in which it doesn't lead into pleasure. Now, In a different hypothetical, let's say, because this is what you meant to ask if you actually listen to the position. In a different hypothetical, let's say you have the self interest to murder someone and you gain pleasure, or you believe you're going to gain pleasure. Would it be okay to do so? Me personally, I would never have that self interest. That's just intuitively impossible for me. But if it is the case that someone possesses the self interest to murder someone else, at least generally speaking, it will be considered immoral. It will be considered intuitively immoral. However, at least for that specific person, reflectively, it would be moral to do so. But that's only for that person. Almost everybody would agree
Mhm.
that they do not possess the self interest to kill others.
Okay. So then, like, wanted to ask you then, is there like some fundamental quality or some fundamental basis that is in correspondence to like your self-interest? Like, for example, like having happiness, like maximizing happiness or like
My
minimizing
self
suffering or
interest?
something like that for you. Like, yeah.
Yeah, for me, look, yeah, for me, usually my self interest is going to be analyzed. So I apologize. Look, how I determine my self interest, I just analyze deeply what's going to bring me the most benefit or the most pleasure while still weighing my other
Mhm.
features when it comes to my life. So let's say X thing brings me more pleasure. Well, I'm not just going to analytically decide that or analyze and then decide that self interest because X thing brings me more pleasure. I have to, or X thing brings me pleasure. I have to weigh both the pleasure I get from that and then the other pleasures that I have within life. So let's say X action that I perform is going to bring me pleasure. However, on the different side, is going to make my family hate me. Well, I gain pleasure from my family. The family also
Mm.
possesses potency to grant me more pleasure. So I have to weigh which one would ultimately grant me more pleasure or which one I would ultimately benefit from more, etc. But to answer your question, most of my choices when it comes to my self-interest possession boils down to what benefit and what amount of pleasure I get from each self-interest and action.
Okay, okay, okay. So pleasure is the fundamental basis. Then
No,
again, no, like the pleasure that is in correspondence with the self-interest. That
no.
is okay.
Benefit and
Then I'm
pleasure are
confused.
distinct.
I'm sorry.
Benefit will be the ultimate. Hold on. So a
Benefit,
pleasure is
yeah.
a benefit, but a benefit doesn't have to be something which derives into pleasure or leaves pleasure.
Yeah, yeah. So benefit. My bad.
Yep.
Just to clear that up. Benefit for your self-interest. Okay. So then, let me ask you this: if everybody thought anyway, and it was like in their benefit when it comes to like the benefit here is going to be pleasure. Like in this instance that I'm talking about, there's a hypothetical where there are like thousands of people which are these psychopath egoists, and they think that killing five people is okay because it gets them this benefit, and they just like go around killing people, right? To the point
Look,
where
I'm going
like
to clarify. I
we are
don't mean to
just like
cut you off, but it's
almost
not
like
okay because I don't mean to cut you off, but let me clarify. It's not okay because it gives them a benefit. The benefit is independent of the self interest. It's only okay if they possess the self
Mhm.
interest and then they attempt to actualize the self interest. That is what determines it being okay, whether or not the self interest is possessed. So they can think it gives them a benefit. The same as I can think me robbing someone gives me a benefit, which it obviously does because I get money. However, like I said, if I don't possess the self interest, there's no determination of morality there. But
Okay,
continue. I
okay, okay.
apologize.
No, no, no. Okay, it's okay. It's okay. If you're unclear or something, ask me. It's just completely okay. So, like, do you think, real quick, one question: do you think there's maybe like an objective factor which is in correspondence to people's self-interest?
What does that mean there?
So, like, for example, as you said that like some people might think it's the benefit and might correspond to their self-interest, but it in some cases really doesn't, right? Do you think
Well,
that
let me
there's like
clarify.
this?
Look, I can't really
Mhm.
think of intuitively don't really think of a case in which someone would possess a self interest in which it does not at all entail a benefit for them. I don't believe there's a real world example where someone can possess a self interest or where someone has possessed a self interest in which does not at least ultimately lead into a benefit or state of pleasure that they're going to experience. Now, someone can say, well, at face value, it doesn't, but ultimately we can boil almost everything down, at least from what I've seen, everything down to self benefit or self pleasure. For example, someone would say, well, Mr. Beast donates money to the poor. Well, we can say, although at face value, he's helping other people's self interest, he's actualizing other people's self interest, which is obviously to feel wealthy or get food on their plate to eat.
Mhm.
Ultimately, we can say that, for example, he possesses the self interest to witness others happy. Therefore, donating money to charity is ultimately actualizing his self interest, which is seeing others happy because that makes him happy or that provides him pleasure.
Mhm. Yeah, but maybe somebody doesn't feel the same way though, right? So like the question that I'm asking is it then going to be some in
Wait,
somebody who's
I
like self?
apologize. What do you mean? What do you mean
It's like
maybe someone
let's
doesn't
just
feel the same way? The same way
so
as
let's
what?
just say there's this Mr. Beast. Let's just say that yeah, let's just say there's a Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast likes to donate money because it helps others feel happy and everything. And there's this other guy which says, well, no, I like to take away from people, right?
Yep.
And both Mr. Beast and this random retarded guy, they both have some very different views, like
Hmm.
completely like opposite views, but like and both
Yep.
opposite self interest. But like you understand what I'm saying? Like is there some objective factor in both which are going to determine whether the self-interest is like okay and acceptable?
Yeah, wait, brother. I don't think you're listening. The self interest is the objective lens. So the self is all we need that concretely establishes the determination of morality. So when you say that there's two opposite beings, well, the opposition lies in what the self interest is or what the self interest references, not the fact that the self interest exists. So as long as the self interest exists, there's an objective lens when it comes to determination of morality. It is irrelevant what the self interest is. Everybody in VC can have an opposite self interest. Hold on, let me time this dude wrist time. I don't know. He keeps on timing him. I don't know why he wants to watch my debate so bad. I apologize. Anyways, so everybody in VC can have an opposite self interest. Our self interests do not have to be compatible. But the fact that self interest exists alone is what qualifies the determination corresponding to reality when it comes to morality.
Oh, okay. I see. So then, let me ask you this: in the egoist view that you hold, which is um, benefit for the self-interest, and a lot of these people, right, have these different self-interest. Let's just say, the fact that it exists, I'm all on board with that. We all have like different interests and everything. Like, let's just say for somebody, there's this Jimmy guy, and Jimmy guy thinks like eating ice cream is something that makes him happy and gives him benefit because he gets pleasure from it. And there's this Bartholomew guy which thinks raping women or
Mhm.
something like that gives him this pleasure and gives him this benefit. These are two
Wait,
completely.
hold on, wait. I'm sorry to
I'm
cut
gonna
you guys
explain.
off. I
Nikolai,
have
this is
to
the same
go. I
question.
can't
You
go.
have to go. Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
huh? Do you want to conclude? I don't. I believe my position already answers that question.
Well,
Before you ask the
yeah, I don't.
no,
You
but
guys
wait,
I mean,
like
you
I
gotta
was
free.
find a
about to ask
different
a
judge.
question, but I wait. If you want to press conclusions, that's fine. I was gonna finish my question, but like, sure,
Okay,
we
look,
can.
I ain't gonna lie. We already understand the question. I
I
believe my
have to go.
position
I'm
already answers
not
the question.
giving. Yeah, no, I'm not.
Nigga,
No.
not, bro. We're done. You can just give. You can just give judgment, bro.
All right, bro.
What do you think won, bro?
Yeah, I mean, like, I just don't know.
How do you not
Oh,
know?
well, man, I didn't even
I
finish
don't
the
see. I
question,
don't see the
man.
reductio towards egoism. It's simple one.
No, I mean, it wasn't gonna be like ego, like
Look, we
well,
can
you
just
think
look. He
it's
left. He
okay.
left. Let's
So,
get a different judge. We can just get a different judge. I'll mix a 5K judge. Who's Bartholomew? Anyways, look. Do you
nickname
want?
Bartholomew is crazy.
Yeah, I'll mix a 5K judge. Wait, who is Yo Chris? Oh,
No, but like that, it wasn't gonna be Yo Infinity, just like outside of everything before the judge comes. Like the reductio was gonna be like something different. It wasn't gonna be like, oh yeah, you're
okay, that's
retarded. You
fine. We can
think
get to
upon
that.
people.
No. We can get to that when we get to it. We just need a new judge.
Oh, fair enough, fair
Look,
enough. Fair enough.
I mix a 5. I know you're there, bro. Can you judge? Oh my god. I could agree to truth, but I don't know. Hold on.
Bro, come on, bro.
Somebody send in the chat Riz on Judge, bro. Like Infinity bash his head, bro. No, I'm joking. I'm
He's a
joking.
toad, bro. Like I would never agree to this, even on my death day. Damn.
No, bro. My bad. Wait, let me see. Let me see. You do you know who Yan? Oh, I remember this person. Do you know who Yanni is? I remember him from my
Yes,
old days, bro.
I'm not agreeing to my judge. Like, come
Oh,
on.
fair enough, fair enough. You
Hey,
have
Quince
some
can
beef with
judge. All
him,
right,
or
Quince is the judge. All right, Quince agree. All right, come on. All right, back to the topic. So look, Quince, we're debating ethical egoism. I just believe it's intuitive and consistent. I believe it gives more normative accounts for society in comparison to every other scenario. I apologize. Every other normative ethical view. He's attempting to give a reductio. He's just asking clarifying questions currently. I believe that the questions go circular and they are already answered by my position. So yeah, you can continue. Quince agreed to judge, man.
Yo, what's good, Quins? Yeah, so you're apparently the judge, bro. So yeah, but like, so to finish the question, like, there's Jimmy and Bartholomew. Jimmy gets they both get pleasure, right? The in this hypothetical, the benefit is the pleasure. One has a different type of getting to this pleasure. He thinks it's instrumentally valuable to his pleasure to eat ice cream. While the Bartholomew retard, he's already named Bartholomew. You understand what I'm saying? He thinks
Hmm.
raping women gets him the pleasure. You understand what I'm saying? Like they
Hmm.
both get pleasure. It's both in their benefit, but they have different instrumental values, right? The question I'm trying to ask: are you monist or pluralist? Pluralist. I'm sorry. When it comes to like what's instrumentally valuable and how you get pleasure and benefit.
Brother, look, the instrumental value is irrelevant here. Look, the determination of morality is the self-interest, so it does not matter at all what leads into pleasure. I'm going to say this again: it does not matter at all what leads into pleasure or benefit. It's just the case that if someone believes that, or at least someone possesses the self-interest to rape others, then most people would consider them more immoral, or intuitively, most would consider them immoral, which is completely fine. There's two reasons why people just generally have
Hmm.
the intuition to not surround themselves with rapists. Why? Because they don't want to be raped, and then secondly, it's simple: people's self-interest is incompatible with that one person's self-interest, which is to rape others or impose their will into others, or to cause an imposition of will. So there's three things there. Now, to answer your question more fundamentally, it's just the case that, and I'm going to point this out for Quince as well, it's just the case that there exists a self-interest. Self-interest is the determination of morality, and boom. So any other question that you have is going to be answered by that state.
I mean, I don't think you didn't.
Hold
I
on,
don't
bro.
think
Well,
you
I don't
fully
know who
realized the
keeps on
question.
like I don't want this dude in here, bro. Like I'm gonna keep timing this dude. My bad, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So like the question and the you say it's kind of like irrelevant. What's like instrumentally valuable? Like it doesn't matter, but like it does matter. Like it does matter, and I'm gonna explain why. Because if you say, well, if you say yes, there is more ways to determine, then and you specifically cannot name them, then it is true that you don't know how you get to this benefit or pleasure that you're talking about, and they can
Brother.
lead into
Oh my
problems,
god.
right?
Repeat the first
'Cause
part. Because
okay,
look,
so
Quince wasn't here, so I'm gonna well, no, let me clarify something to Quince that was clarified earlier. But since Quince is new here, I'm gonna clarify it. Like Rizhan, are you a fan? Do you want to see my debate that bad? Like, damn. Anyway, so look, Quince, I'm arguing, or at least I'm just defending rational individual ethical egoism. I'm just of the belief that the morality of actions are determined off of the self-interest that one possess. Now, let me clarify. Nowhere in that thesis that this does it state at all it's determined. Oh my god, hold on. My mom's gonna give me a second.
yeah.
His mom is not calling him.
No, I think
Anyways,
it is.
nowhere in that thesis at all does it, yeah, nowhere in that thesis at all does it announce the pleasure or the benefit that you get from self-interest. However, I'm going to add something. I do believe, and I can't actually see a single instance in which a self-interest is possessed consciously, but that self-interest is not possessed to not derive benefit. So in almost every single scenario, I'm going to say all scenarios because that's what I have epistemic access to. From what I have epistemic access to, every single scenario where someone possesses a self-interest consciously, they're having it or they possess it because they believe it to lead into self-pleasure or self-benefit. Now, does that mean my position is restricted to that? No. Egoism does not talk about pleasure or benefit, which is why I don't know why these niggas keep on conflating what egoism talks about. It just talks about the morality of actions being determined off of the self-interest of the actor. Now, you can give your point again, and then I'll answer it if I believe it to be relevant. I just want to clarify that to the judge.
Okay, yeah, then I'm just like confused. Then what do you mean by self-interest? I don't want to conflate. I don't, I don't
Hold
want
on.
to
Let me. This
misinterpret.
nigga, he wasn't the judge. Quince just believe he won. He taught. I ain't gonna lie. I'm not about to debate in here if niggas keep on untiming. Oh
No, bro. If he's just like mute him or something, bro. Like he
no,
just
it's
like
not
not let him
that.
speak.
Like I ain't gonna lie, bro. I'm not about to debate in here. Like this nigga is annoying as fuck. He does not
You
need to
have
be
you
in.
have
Hey, Yanni, I ain't gonna lie. I'm just about to lead the server. You gonna get straight. Keep on timing this nigga wrist on. This nigga is a weirdo, and I'll tell you why after. Like his dead ass not even on no perma abuse shit. You
fuck's
see
that
me let him
Rizhan
be.
asshole.
Like I'll actually tell you after, like this, like not even no weird shit, like
Okay,
dead
okay,
ass.
I'll let the debate finish and you can tell me after if it's alright.
Yeah, sure. I look so yeah, I already clarified what self interest was, but I'll just clarify again since Quiz is new here. Look, self interest is going to be one self desire or one self will. So if I will something to be the case, that's just going to be my interest.
Okay. So something that is in correspondence to like your desire. Okay. So then, when you say desire, so basically what you ought to do is going to be determined by what you desire to do or like your preference, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So if everybody was an egoist and everybody had like a desire to do something which like destroys the world and like destroys society, it leads to like a social nihilism eventually, you would say that that something is wrong, right?
Oh my God, brother. One, let me clarify three things. One, it's irrelevant whether or not everybody's an egoist. I believe that everybody's morality ultimately boils down to an egoist, so it doesn't matter if they consider themselves to be egoists. Secondly, the quantity of people who hold desires are not the determination of morality. That's not what determines morality at all. Meaning that if three people hold the desire to rape someone, while one person holds the desire to not rape someone, does not mean that due to the quantitative difference, the quantitative upscale will be the one in which determines it being morally okay to rape someone. It's the individualistic sense that determines the rape. Or I apologize, the morality of the rape. So it doesn't matter if there's three against one. The ratio is irrelevant. And then finally, stop asking questions which my position already answers. Look, it's simple. If someone holds the self-interest to do something, it's moral to attempt to actualize the self-interest. And then there's another thing I actually want to clarify real quick. My bad. My moral system is obviously modeled off of current events and how the world is currently. So let me clarify, and I just want to say this to Quince. If aliens were proven to exist currently or right now, my moral system doesn't account for aliens right now. So I would remodel it and refine my position to account for aliens.
Wait, I'm
But
so
go ahead.
sorry, bro. Like, I think you would have to like repeat from the start, but my internet was bugging. I'm so sorry. I left like
Okay.
3 times.
Look, one, the quantity doesn't determine the morality of an action. Secondly, my moral system is currently modeled off of what society is going through currently. What is society currently? All the things which are consistent with society currently. So if aliens were to be proven to exist right now, my moral system would be refined. And then, yeah, okay, shit.
Type shit. But yeah, I just simply don't think that view is going to be. I want to touch on one statement that you said. Like everybody else is usually going to boil down to egoism. We can look into that statement
Oh
later.
wait. Let me
But,
clarify that. My bad. Look, because I forgot to repeat that since you were bugging since you weren't here. Look, it's irrelevant whether or not people consider themselves as egoists. The same as it's irrelevant whether or not people consider themselves as any other normative ethical view. I'm just saying that the normative ethical view is consistent with society's actions or what they possess, features that they possess specifically. Now, I'm asking for the reductio because you're obviously going to say that there's a problem with my view, whether it's an absurdity within society or whether or not it's a contradiction, logically speaking. So I'm asking for the inconsistency that you can point out in comparison to
mhm.
other views.
I mean, in comparison to the other views, your specifically your view boils down to the desire. That is fundamentally the problem. His desire is a basis for certain why action is going to be moral or immoral,
Mhm.
and you won't see any problem with people doing these certain actions and leading to social nihilism. I don't
Well,
then
I
know
do
what
see a
moral
problem.
means under your view.
Wait, hold on.
You
Look, maybe
understand?
you're not listening. The entire point is that my moral system is determined off of what's likely and how society currently is. It's unlikely for there to be a world in which people lead into social nihilism. Additionally, it's just the case, and
Mhm.
listen, please, look, it's just the case that I can hold the self-interest in which is incompatible with everybody else. So when you say, well, I can see it as okay, no, my self-interest permits me from seeing it okay as okay, which is completely fine. I don't have to see it as okay, but other people can see it as okay, and that can still be consistent with my view.
Mhm. Okay, but then this, it doesn't matter. Like that is not the point that I was making. The point that I was making is, if it is true that it boils down to the desire, which you, I think you said yourself that that's like what self-interest is. Then,
Yep.
in comparison to the other views, I don't know. I don't know what you mean by moral at all. That is the
What I
thing
just
that I'm
told you
trying to
what I
get.
meant by moral. So moral just means good, and I will obviously say there's an is out there. So I could say that the odd is derived from one, the statement of is, and then also something in combination, which is determination of morality, obviously being the self-interest. So I could say something along the lines of you ought to attempt to actualize your self-interest, and obviously that ought is going to be good. And then the action of
Hmm.
attempting to self, yeah, and then the action of attempting to actualize your self-interest would obviously be good. what's there. There's a clear image of what's good and what's bad. So at the top of the moral hierarchy is the attempt to actualize one's self-interest. At the top of the immoral hierarchy, the imposition of will of someone else is going to reside there. Obviously, that's going to be housed.
Okay. So then the thing that I'm just like that I also wanted to question on, you said something about, I didn't really track it. You said something about society and how if some society changed, something about the view will also change. What did you say? What was going to change
Yeah,
if
so
like
in
society
some
was?
look, so in some what I said 3 times was that my view, obviously ethics related, is determined and modeled off of how society currently is. So if I were to get an update about aliens existing, my view is obviously going to be modeled. Why? Because I don't account for aliens currently under my view. It's as simple as that. Or I actually do account for aliens under my view, but this is just an example. A lot of people don't account for the current ethical views off of aliens, but aliens would just be an example of something that one may have to update their view off of. Now, the reason why I would have to update my view specifically for aliens, and this is just an example, is because aliens, if they are what believes them to be, would possess a self-interest. So they still have a way to determine morality there. It be consistent. And I'm just saying my view is
Mhm.
currently off of what's likely for society, obviously, and then what is happening within society. So people falling down into social nihilism is obviously not likely currently. There's no priors there. I don't see any priors. So if you're
Mhm.
going to say something like that being likely, I need the motivation there. I don't care about a random possibility, which my view is not modeled off of mere possibilities. It's modeled off of likelihood and how society currently is, which most people's views are.
Mhm. Okay. So I just like have one quick question to clarify. Do you think that there's like a standard of like rationalizing and like objective standard on of determining whether desire is like a desire under your view? Just like a quick clarifying question.
What does that mean there?
Like for example, if do you think like there's like a good desire, like meaning like that there's something which you
Well,
think
look,
you ought to do, but also something which you
look.
think
So
you ought
obviously,
not to.
look. So obviously, a desire in which is good personally to me is going to be a desire in which fits or is compatible with my desires. Why? Because I'm an ethical egoist, as I've said. So anything in which is going to be something that attempts to actualize my desire or actualizes my desire is going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that if you
Okay.
possess the desire in which is compatible with mine, and I had the desire, and let's say your desire is to see me happy, I have the desire to have someone to see me happy, or if I have the desire or possess the desire for someone to see me happy, then you will be attempting to actualize my desire. You will be actualizing my desire in that scenario, actually. Meaning that, yes, the answer is yes.
Okay. So then I just have then this is like the last question that we can like engage like further. Do you think that there is like an objective good in ethical egoist view?
Yup, and objective good is the attempt to actualize the self interest, as I said. Yup.
Okay. So then I just have like a
And then
question. Like
look, let
this
me
is a
just clarify. So it's just the case that look, if ethical egoism is true, let's say if
mm-hmm.
ethical egoism is consistent and true, then under the consistency, so meaning relative to the consistent framework that's put up, it will be objectively good, at least the determination of morality, it will be objectively good that the attempt to actualize self-interest is performed. Simple as that.
Okay. So then, like, then in a hypothetical where, for example, you wanna beat somebody up and somebody stops you from doing that, do you think
Mhm.
that they're doing like a bad action when they're stopping you from like beating up a person?
Both actions are good. If it's in my self-interest to beat up the person and I'm attempting to actualize it, then the action of me attempting to actualize it will be good. And then if they're possessing the self-interest to not see someone else's will imposed on, which is that obviously at the top of the subjective immoral hierarchy, then it would be good for them to actualize or attempt to actualize the self-interest of not seeing someone else's will imposed on. So in both situations, relativistically at least, there will be good actions. Now, when we talk about intuitively and generally, I would say, depending on the context, most people would say the person who's impeding on the imposition of will within that scenario would be the person that's viewed as a good person, intuitively and generally speaking. But when I say generally speaking, that's just off of most people's within society, by the way, most people's
Yeah.
self-interest. So yeah.
Okay. So like, but yours, like for example, in this scenario, obviously you don't think that, but like in this scenario, it's yourself in your self interest to beat up this person, and somebody's stopping you from actualizing that. You would think that's a bad action because they're stopping you from actualizing the self interest.
Nope. I
But
would say that's a bad action to me. That's why you have to use
bad
language
action to
correctly and
you.
clarify. So look, hold on, let me clarify. That's why you have to use language and clarify. I wouldn't say that's a bad action. I would say, what are you doing? That's a bad action to me. That's a bad action for me as well. So to and for me, I can use things such as those to classify it as relative actions, obviously, relative moralities. Duh.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so because real quick, I
Yo.
will do something which I usually don't do.
Huh?
This because I'm still confused on morality. In your view,
Huh?
I'll just concede here, and me and you can do something else like later on because like I'm still confused and I don't want to be like this retarded skeptic. Okay?
Well, I mean, if you're confused, you can ask more questions. I can try to break it down more. You don't have to concede.
No, because like I don't really want to sound like a retarded skeptic. You'll like reduce your view
Well,
to
I'm
me
not
like three
saying
times,
that.
and I
Wait,
still
no,
don't
no, no.
understand it.
Look. Well, I'm not expecting you to be like a high tier 5 or a high tier 6 or anything like that. Look, so if you're confused, you can ask the questions that you have, and then I can just answer. I'm not going to say that you're skeptic or you're being skeptic the entire time. Obviously, until it gets out of, like I said, I'm not having like high expectations of you be like tier 10 or something like that. So,
Okay, so then I'll just do this. In your view, this person who's stopping you actualizing their self-interest, and that's like good for them, but like for you, it's gonna be bad, right? But then
yep.
obviously you would say that you would try to be like, oh well, that's bad for me, and you're stopping me from actualizing my self-interest to try to motivate them to let you beat up this person because you think that action is good. But if they still stop you and still stop you from actualizing this like thing, then they're doing something which is immoral under your view, but still you're saying that they're doing something which is moral, and that's like where I'm confused. And I know you
Look,
said like it's
look.
good for them and bad for
Yeah. So
you,
look, look,
but I
look,
don't
look, look.
understand what that
I,
means.
Okay, when you say that you're confused, look, I don't really understand how you're confused about just a standard subjectivist position. So I'm going to break it down simply. So let's say morality is not objective, meaning it's subjective because it's obviously dichotomous. I can say that, and tell me if you don't understand this. Let's say robbing a bank because my family's poor and I want to feed my family. Okay. So
Hmm.
I can say that since morality is subjective, I have an ultimate goal in which would bring pleasure towards my family or do something beneficial towards my family, and which most people would deem to be okay, at least. I can rob the bank, and that would be moral for me to do so. But a policeman who's attempting to stop me, it would be an immoral action under their view. Is there any confusion within that example?
Wait, you cut off for me. Just like repeat after subjective. I didn't hear anything. I'm sorry.
Hold on. This nigga, Yandi's retarded. Look, I said a relative objective thing. So it's relatively objective if you deem this thing to be consistent. This nigga is not listening. Anyways, my bad. Yeah, what'd you say? You asked me to repeat myself?
Yeah. After subjective, I didn't hear anything you said. Something about like
Yeah,
family and
yeah.
shit.
So
Like,
look, tell me if you understand this example. In some, we have a family of 5 who is poor and can't feed their children. Okay, so you have the father
yeah.
who goes out and attempts to rob a store. Most people would
Uh huh.
say, or at least a lot of people, a group of people would say that it's moral to rob that store and feed his family because his family is suffering and it's a father. He's attempting to feed his family. Okay.
Yeah.
So the policeman, however, would say that's immoral. So it's just the case that
Mm.
there's some subjective language I'm invoking there. Is there any confusion with the subjective language?
No, there isn't. But I think that whole like example, I don't agree with that. Like,
Wait, no, you don't.
that's like
When
the
you say
thing
you
with
don't agree,
killing.
well, hold on. When you say you don't agree with, what feature are you talking about? Because you don't have to agree with it being moral, because that's the
Uh-huh.
subjective part, obviously.
Yeah, and the thing that I disagree with is that the policeman will either a disagree and two I disagree that
Well,
if something is going to be
you said the
subjective.
policeman will what? We can go
Number
to the second
one,
question after, or did that second
I don't know
disagreement?
like whether a policeman would disagree, and two, I don't agree that
Okay,
morality is
wait, hold on.
subjective.
No. This is just the example. It doesn't have to be the case that the policeman in actuality or
Oh, okay,
within
okay.
actual
Oh, okay,
reality
okay,
would
okay.
disagree.
Sorry, my bad,
So
my bad.
in the
Oh no, I understand
example,
what it means.
yeah,
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 yeah.
in the example, the policeman disagrees and believes it's immoral to rob a bank, independent of the ultimate goal that he's robbing the bank for. So you have one person on standpoint who believes it's moral to do so. You have a second person being an additional desire or this an additional moral system or an additional, I apologize, determination for morality that believes it's immoral. Is there any confusion when it's subjective language relative to morality that I'm evoking there?
No, I don't think there's a confusion with subjective language. I just think that it's wrong to believe subjective morality. I can
Okay,
give you the
perfect.
argument for
Okay, so
objective
what's the
morality.
argument? That's
Okay,
completely
okay, sure,
fine.
sure, sure,
What's the
sure.
argument?
So, do you understand like what moral realism is like a language? Do
Yup.
you understand what?
What type of
Okay, you
moralism?
understand. If you're asking about robust or relaxed, I'm not too sure. I don't really care about truth makers. As far as it goes for a naturalist and non-naturalist, I'm like in conjunction of two. like I do believe that moral statements are supposed to be motivating, then they are supposed to motivate others, but I do disagree that they can be proven by science and epistemological domains. That's like where I draw a distinction between the two.
Okay,
So
so if there's no if there's no epistemic access to epistemological motivations, then how is it going to be motivating? And then
no,
secondly, what's the argument?
mhm. Okay, I'll give the argument, but for the first question, the specific epistemological domains that I was referring to were like empiricism, science, physics, and those like domains, like specifically that like prove the type of facts like moon exists. Like you can prove that via those domains, but like for example,
Wait,
a
hold on,
thing which
wait,
I
no,
want
no,
to
no,
say.
that's fine. Look, we can disregard we can disregard empirical validation. Let's say that's not a method when it
Okay.
comes to motivation and moral statements. Then what's the motivation? Because obviously it's going to have to be epistemological if we're talking about motivation and not justification.
Okay, so the argument.
And just to clarify,
To,
because a lot of low
uh-huh.
tiers like Yanni and Shay conflate the two. Motivation is not the same thing as justification. But go ahead.
Yeah. So the argument that you asked me for the argument, right?
For moral realism, yep.
Yeah.
And then I
So
also
do
asked
you
the
want it
question.
formally or informally?
Hold on, just to clarify. I also asked the question of what method we use to depict the motivation.
Okay. So
And then also, I'm fine with it being formal
Mhm.
or informal.
Okay, that's great. You're not one of these goon retards. Thank God. So the get the evidence of like moral statements are within these 10 independent reasons that we use them to like
I
determine
apologize.
what
What'd you
an
say?
action. So the way we determine what action is going to be immoral is with the stance independent reasons. The specific ones that I'm referring to for me, a stance independent reason is going to be to either A, avoid suffering that is in correspondence with some virtues, or B, to maximize eudaimonia or happiness or flourishing via using these virtues. Like are
Mhm.
currently using virtue ethics. So maybe
So
like I
yeah,
can
what's the
explain
argument
to
as to
you.
why? Yeah. So those can be stance independent motivations that people are able to analyze and then get motivated from. This completely fine. Or stance independent reasons that people are motivated by. But what's the argument for the objective system?
Okay, so for the objective system, okay, so I'll give it formally. But one of the parts of the argument
Do
is
you
going
have
to
it
be
typed out?
empiric. Yeah, I have it typed out. I have it typed out. Do you want me to send it in
All right,
side chat?
send it. Yes, and then scans.
Yeah, sure. Bro, the Rizan told me you were gonna overtalk me and not let me debate, bro. Like, I'm so glad that we didn't have to get to that.
Rizhan is autistic. I don't let him speak because everything he says is retarded.
I bet. But what against Rizan, bro? Like, he couldn't be that bad, bro.
Niggas a loser.
Anyway.
I'll tell Yanni what he did after this, bro.
I bet. Okay, so
Yes.
I will send it. Do you want a side chat?
Scans.
In scans. Okay, scans.
Yo, what the hell happened to his mic? Yo, what happened to his mic?
Scan. Oh, I'm here. Oh wait, I switched to PC, bro. Alright, bet. 太学. I think this is all. Okay, so there's P1, an argument for P1. P2 requires empirics, which I can also send if that's something you want.
If it takes the same. Yo, are you good, bro? Are you out of breath? Okay. Heavy ass, careless breath.
No, but it's just like the microphone, bro. Like, I'm gonna mute myself. Sorry, bro. Sorry, big bro.
It is he's still in order starting to believe in moral propositions. Reason killing is bad. Yeah, how do we determine morals? Yeah, how do we determine motivation when it comes to? I apologize. How do we determine strength when it comes to motivation?
Okay, so when it comes to motivation, wait, how do we determine what when it comes to motivation? I'm sorry, I didn't
Yeah,
hear you.
what's the system that we use to codify the strength when it comes to not orange?
Oh,
Meat, what the
normative
fuck?
strength. Okay.
Anyways,
The system we use is just gonna be like whether it corresponds to the set certain stance independent reasons or justification, right? So in a way that
my
I
bad. My mom was
explain.
my bad. My mom was texting me. What you say?
No worries. So the way I see we determine like this normative strength is going to be in correspondence to these stance independent reasons or justification. Like for example, let's say you have a statement like killing is wrong because, and then I give you a reason to why like killing is wrong. This reason to why I'm telling you that killing is wrong. That's something that gives this said motivational property or this set normative strength. So maybe like I can explain like this. Let's just say my reason, right, is I want to avoid suffering or something like that. Doesn't matter, and that's why I believe that killing is wrong. That's the set motivation that I believe is
Okay, so
appropriate to give
look,
them.
wait, let me clarify. Look, the reason is the motivation. Look, just be clarified. You're going to be motivated from the reason. They're not identical. So it's just a causal relationship. They're usually
Yeah,
the
yeah,
percentage of the
yeah.
reason, and then someone's motivated from it. But I still don't see what determines, other than if you're talking about quantity wise, when it comes to the set of reasons, I don't see what codifies the strength.
hmm Okay, so before I answer what quantifies the strength, I want to say that I absolutely agree with you. They're
Wait, hold
not
on,
the
hold on. Let me go
same.
downstairs. Wait, my bad. Hold on.
I bet. Yo, chat, how you been, chat?
I'm good, bro.
Fuck you, nigga.
Oh man, that was mean as shit. But like, I
No,
love
he
y'all,
was, he
man.
was talking to me. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I was not talking to that nigga Yanni.
All right,
I
bro.
bet.
Let me select the you can see them. Hold on. W free to go, bro. W free to go.
Thanks, man.
Are you actually a realist?
Oh yeah.
Fair enough.
Although I understand some subjectivists. I just don't understand some people like air theorists and like people who believe that they can just do whatever they want in terms of like subjectivism.
What's
But
your
like
thoughts on cognitivism?
on non-cognitivism,
Yeah.
based view, if you consider like oughts existing, like for example, like if you're familiar with C's view, me and C talked about his like
Prescriptivism?
non-cognitivism view. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think the view can be so fucking great if the view holds oughts and not like just prescribe. If the prescribe is dependent on the oughts, that can be like view which, although it holds stance independent reasons, it can also be stronger in motivating other people than it is like a normal like a objectivist view. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
So
feel you.
like that view I really fuck with. But I don't think that that's how people usually obviously talk about it. So I really don't agree with it. But if from what C is talking, I agree with C's view. For example, me and C debated it way before, and I'm currently like I'm not too sure. Wait, this Infinity guy is good, bro. Like I
Hey, there's
like
no need,
naming.
there's
He
no need,
actually
there's no
knows.
need. No need, no need, no need, no need, no need. Don't glaze.
Look, all
Don't
right,
glaze.
yo, oh my, yo, it's not glazed because I'm good, but hold on. I have to watch my brothers. I can still talk to you, but can't be that loud. Give me a second.
I bet. No, I just heard he was gonna be a rhetoric demon, but like I'm surprised.
I'm a rhetoric demon against people that I don't like or people who try to do it back to me. I can have normal conversations, unlike Yanni and Rizan.
Rizzo's
What
still
the fuck did I
catching
do?
strays, bro. Infinity can be normal sometimes. Alright. Bro, I haven't been in on this shit for so long. How y'all been, man?
All right, come on.
I was
Alright,
Yeah,
bet.
so yeah, I was
Alright,
just
bet.
saying, yeah, I was just establishing a distinction between motivation and reason. You're going to be motivated from the reason, meaning there's a causal relationship depending on the scenario, but not an identity
Yep.
relation. But go ahead.
Yeah, so that's something I wanted to say before I say what determines the normative strength. I absolutely agree on that. View that they're not the same, but one is that they're like causal. That's something that I agree with. But like because people in the VC might not understand. But like the thing that I just wanted to say, yeah, what determines a normative strength in the view that I hold, for example, is like when it comes to like different propositions. Let's just say you have a proposition which is
But I
like,
don't mean to cut you off, but I'm not asking what determines a moral or normative strength. I'm asking what determines the strength that derives a normative view. So you said if it
uh
takes the
huh.
same similar normative strength. So is that to say the same similar normative state strength in the sense where the view has a specific amount of strength, or normative strength as in the motivation or reason has
A
amount of strength?
motivation, not like what
Okay.
determines like which one is which normative view is better. Yeah. Just to clear the confusion. Motivational property or the motivation is like this in a statement. Like let's just say you have a normative statement or a moral statement. You ought not to murder. This
Mhm.
ought to, should, mustn't, need to, don't need to. Those type of things in that statement are the oughts or the motivational properties. And that something is going to be determined on how good the justification is, in my opinion. So let's just say you have like two propositions. One says, you ought to believe um, chocolate ice cream is better than a vanilla ice cream. And you have another statement, which is like, you ought to believe moon exists. And this ought to, you have like, let's just say, in a ice cream case, the justification is, well, I like it more, therefore it's better. And then in a moon existing case, you have, well, we can all see the moon. You can prove it scientifically. You can prove it like this. Blah blah
But
blah
when
blah
it comes
blah.
to
Yeah.
favoring the features of an entity, what is the method that we use, like I said, to codify the motivational strength between the favoring of an entity and then the favoring of the existence of an entity? Meaning that you're favoring features in which
Mhm.
you already determined to exist, and then in what scenario you're just favoring the existence overall, independent of the features. The features can be irrelevant, at least the accidental
Mhm.
features or whatever. But go ahead.
Yeah. Just so we're clear, this was an example. This wasn't like a, I
Yeah,
just
yeah,
used
yeah,
this as an example. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So, um, basically, in a case, how you would determine like this motivational property or the strength of the motivational property, the thing that I was just to cut it short, so I don't yap too much. I know I can do it. Um, basically, it's dependent on how good or how strong the justification is. The stronger the justification, the better the motivational property is gonna be.
But when you
And
say how strong the justification is, I'm asking what that means. So there's two things I'm asking.
oh, okay,
One,
sure.
hold on. One, what determines and codifies the comparison of strength? And then secondly, what determines the strength of the motivation, if not quantity wise?
Okay.
Is it the amount of warranted assumptions it has?
No, it doesn't have to be like warranted assumptions and parsimony. I'm just like specifically referring to like, for example, you have again you have two propositions. One says that it's because I like it more, and the other says, well, we can all see the moon. You can see the moon. You can prove it like via these domains. Blah blah blah. Obviously, you're gonna say that this other one is better, right? You're gonna say that this one proves it being more likely, while the other
Yeah,
one
but
is
I
just
have
like based on the
reasons.
qualia,
Yeah,
right?
but well, oh my God, it's dark. Anyways, but I have my own personal system of determining which one is a quote unquote stronger reason. However, I'm questioning what that means, at least in the argument sense, because most people are going to
Mhm.
have, or at least a lot of people are going to have a distinct reason as to why as to why which motivation is better, stronger, or whatever. So when you say qualia, I don't
Mhm.
think qualia is going to be a determination there. That's irrelevant. But there's the
Mhm.
example that lies on the table. Well, there's these scientific priors or these scientific facts in which determines the moon existing, and then the reason as to why you should like ice cream better than cake or something like that is because I favor ice cream over cake. Well, there it just depends on the scenario, because if I favor ice cream over cake and you have priors of me, oh my God, these dogs, and you have priors for me usually being credible when it comes to my taste and what I favor taste wise, then you can say that I have more motivation in the scenario, or at least I have a stronger motivation in a scenario where I favor ice cream over cake rather than in the scenario where there's scientific priors that build likelihood for the moon existing.
Wait, what did you say? The last sentence? Just the last one.
Yeah, so in the case where I have prior credibility due to prior
Wait,
observations of
give me a
my
sec. Give me a
taste,
sec. Give me a sec.
do y'all hear my dogs?
Yeah, it's not that loud, but yeah, you can go ahead.
Not
Somebody
really.
Yeah,
knocked
yeah,
on the door.
yeah. In some, basically, in the scenario, I say it depends on the context. In the scenario where I have priors for my observations being credible, when it comes to let's say you're asking me because you want to see which one you like more. Let's say that 5 times prior, I've tried things and I compared them to others and I said they're better, and then you taste it and you agree with my assessments. Then you can say you have stronger motivations to believe in the instance, or believe in the instance where you should favor over ice cream over cake in comparison to the scientific priors that build likelihood for the moon existing, just due to
Mhm.
credibility alone. So it just depends on the scenario. And let me clarify,
Mhm.
I'm not saying that a comparison between strength when it comes to reasons and motivation doesn't exist, but you can move on from this point if you want to. I'm just going to ask the argument for P2.
Okay, before we move on, just like this one real quick thing about you said
Hmm.
like you're gonna have more priors. For example, if like another person you like tasted so many things, and then you say like for example like, well, I like ice cream more than I like cake, and then the other person like agrees with you or something, you're gonna have better priors than you will have for like example like a scientific research. To that, let's just say like this that's something that I also want to have. In a case where like for example 10 people disagree with you, 5 agree with you, and in the other one, which is like moon existing, is like 19 to 1. that agree with you. Is it like, is that going to be the like fundamental reason to why you would say one is better justification than the other, or is there going to be some other?
Nope, I don't believe quantity. Yeah, I don't believe quantity determines the strength of a reason. Because
Oh,
obviously,
okay,
let's
okay.
say I have, yeah. So obviously, let's say I have just one premise for, or let's say I have two premises in which infers a conclusion about ice cream being better than cake. And the one premise is that, well, well, let's say I had premise one. This dude who I trust the assessments of assesses ice cream to be above cake. And then the second premise is that ice cream looks better than cake. The conclusion can be inferred, and the conclusion can be something along the lines of ice cream is cake. I
Uh huh.
apologize. Ice cream is better than cake. Now, in a scenario where we have five premises, one premise being D1 is the good debater, second premise being Tensa is the terrible debater, third premise being Yanni is
False.
an
Both are
amazing
false.
debater, etc. There's obviously a quantitative difference when it comes to the set of reasons, but most people intuitively wouldn't grant that the reasons are stronger, obviously, and it seems to be the case that the reasons don't even infer the conclusion there. So you can have reasons, and yeah, reasons can motivate, obviously, but we're talking about motivational strength, meaning that you can be motivated by anything, even if it doesn't infer the conclusion. Logically speaking, I can be motivated to start working out because I see a brown square or some shit like that.
Hmm.
Motivation exists independent of whether or not the reason, or I apologize, whether or not the argument is valid. That's
Uh
the
huh.
core distinction between motivation and a reason.
Yeah, but like then there's like a problem. Wait, give me a sec. Give me a sec.
Nigger, 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 nigger.
Yeah, sorry, I'm back. My mom was tweaking.
No, you good.
Yeah, basically, the thing that then I kind of have a confusion with. What is the epistemic access, or what is the type of justification, or what is the type of what is the type of thing at all which gives you the strong motivational property to do a certain action? Under your view,
What? What'd you ask?
under your view, what is going to be a good
You
justification,
said what?
or
My
okay,
bad, my
under
brother, my
you?
brother. Come here.
Yeah, sure, go. What is the good? What is the What is the justification that gives you a strong motivational property under your view, at least?
So I'm gonna ask: are you talking about, let's say, let's limit it to an example? Are you saying a strong motivation to perform an action?
Yeah.
Uh, well, this is of course going to boil down to my view. This thing that gives me motivation to perform an action is obviously going to be my self-interest.
No, but like in a sense, like where not ethical egoism view, like in a view where like let's just say
Nigga,
yourself.
what? In
No,
a view
no,
that
I'm
I
gonna
don't
explain.
hold?
No. Let me explain. So let's just say like you in your self-interest, like you're determining which one is gonna be better for your self-interest, and like you
Mhm.
have the one which is like, okay, well, this one tells me so much more, well, and justifies like why it's more probable that moon exists, and the other one is like trying to convince you that like chocolate ice cream is better than vanilla ice cream. Which one are you going to say is like even your ethical egoism view going to be like more in your self-interest? Maybe to boil it down like that.
Well, I mean, neither of the examples you gave when it comes to the favoring ice cream over cake and then the moon existing have anything to do with self-interest. We're just talking about beliefs there. I'm going to answer two questions. First question is going to be, what helps me decide, or what helps me decide the reason, I apologize, the self-interest there. So the strength in which is going to help me decide the self-interest is obviously going to lie in the amount of pleasure I get, which the pleasure can be determined upon prior instances of pleasure that I got from said thing or action, or observations of other people getting pleasure. It depends on the scenario. And then to answer the second question, which is, well, even under your ethical ego's perspective, what's going to be the motivation for either belief? Uh, Anyways, well, the motivation just lies in priors, as I said. So
Uh,
just the strength of the priors. Simple as that.
okay, wait. Can you repeat what was again the for the first
Hold
question
on.
the answer? Okay.
My bad. Yeah. So the first question was simply how I determine, anyways, the self interest is just, or the first question was just how I determine the strength when it comes to the depiction of self interest or determination of self interest, and it's simply going to lie within the amount of pleasure I get. So That's just me though. Not
Mhm.
everybody has to determine it like this. But under my ego's perspective, I can just say, well, I'm gonna base my self-interest about around how much pleasure or how good the
Mhm.
benefits I reap after the self-interest is actualized are, which is fine. And then to answer the second question, well, not a limited answer, meaning that this is not the only answer, but in most cases I would use priors. In the case where there is no priors, I would just go off of intuition. In the case where I'm not going off of intuition, I could just go off of priors in which are irrelevant but
Mhm.
seemingly are relevant, meaning that in actuality they can be irrelevant, but I can at least picture in my mind some type of connection that they have, and then I can form an analytical conclusion off of the attempted connection.
Mhm. Okay, then let me also okay then in like the let me raise you hypothetical. You have like two hypotheses, and which is like I ought to do drugs and I ought not to do drugs, right? In the ethical egoism view, one gives you probably more pleasure than the other, or in a sense just tells you, well, I get more dopamine from this than I get from this. But like you have like a reason which is like, well, it brings me more pleasure to, for example, do drugs. But like the other hypothesis tells you, well, it's bad for your health, it's bad for your well-being to do, for example,
Well,
drugs because it will hurt this, and that. And then like you have a genuine justification to why you ought not to do drugs. But the justification to do drugs is, well, I get more dopamine from it. Which one would you say under the ethical egoist view is better, or just like under a subjective view? Which one would you say is a better justification?
well, when you say a subjective view, the type of subjectivist I am is an ethical egoist. So to answer your question, it just depends on the scenario. Again, so you have to combine them. You can't just separate them. You have to combine them. It's not the case that, or when you make the claim that something brings you more pleasure, well, that's going to be relative. If you're saying that the drug brings you more pleasure than any other instance, meaning the instance in which you preserve your health, you preserve your family's opinion of you, you preserve society's opinion of you, because people's opinion of you are going to go down if you do drugs. Obviously, that's just empirically the case. Then obviously there's going to be a determination there. But in the instance where most people, this is most people's instance, almost everybody considers how much pleasure you're going to get from drugs independently, but that's only an independent variable. When you add the other variables, meaning a combination of variables, you can use the fact that yes, drugs gives you pleasure. However, what else gives you pleasure? Or what are the non-benefits from it? Because it's not, like I said, I don't just determine my self-interest off of pleasure I get. I determine it also off of benefits. So yes, pleasure would be a benefit, but a benefit isn't pleasure. Meaning that yes, pleasure is included within the category of what's beneficial, but benefits aren't limited and restricted to what brings you pleasure. So I can just weigh in two self-interest, the self-interest to not do drugs and then the self-interest to do drugs. Which one ultimately provides me more pleasure, meaning and benefits, meaning which one is more of a net positive relative to my self-interest and my desires. And me personally, and most people would obviously choose not doing drugs because it preserves society's opinion of you, it preserves your family's opinion of you, it preserves your health, meaning that you can possibly live longer and experience more things in which could potentially bring you pleasure. So let's say doing drugs will grant you more pleasure than riding your bike tomorrow. Well, that's fine. However, you can't just weigh what happens tomorrow. You have to weigh everything in combination. So let's say now there's a scenario where you ride your bike tomorrow
Uh huh.
and you're able to eat a piece or a cake or something like that. Those two things can ultimately grant you more pleasure, meaning that you can choose those things,
Mhm.
meaning the potency for pleasure, at least in that instance, over the drugs. Go ahead.
Okay, I really didn't want to interrupt you because you did clarify some things, but like the fundamental thing that I was asking, not whether like what's bringing more pleasure, but like in a case where like both will bring you pleasure. I'm not saying that, but like in a case where one brings you like dopamine and one brings you this, and the other one is like giving you a justification to like why you probably shouldn't do drugs, simply not in correspondence to your pleasure or something like that. Would you say that like they both still give you pleasure? The one just gives you this one, the one just give you this one, and you have to determine which one you're gonna be in. The one that doesn't do drugs and
Well,
the
I
one
answered the
that does
question.
do drugs.
Look, the answer to the question in sum was it depends on the scenario. Obviously, for me, let's say you're asking directly what I would do, I would weigh it off of, meaning I would choose not taking drugs. Why? Because not taking drugs would give me not just pleasure, but more benefits. So I would get a short term interval of dopamine within the instance where I take drugs. It's completely fine. I can grant that. However, I can also get a dopamine from saying no to drugs. And not just that, but
Mhm.
dopamine in combination with potency for dopamine. Because obviously, if you take drugs, for example, even if it's not true, let's say that you hold the belief that you taking drugs takes 10 years off of your lifespan. Well, that's 10
Uh huh.
years of potent potential pleasure. So I can consider the potential pleasure and then the current pleasure I get from preserving my health and not taking drugs, and then outweigh the pleasure you get from drugs and benefits you get from drugs.
Yeah, but obviously, like there's like the different things and like there's different justifications. But the thing that I'm asking you, and it's great that you laid that out. Do you think that okay, one is like giving me this pleasure which is like short term, and this one is giving me better pleasure or something like that? Do you think that this one which tells you well it gives me better pleasure? Do you think that justification is going to be a better justification in your view?
I don't believe there is a better justification. Why? Because I believe that justification is determined off of your self interest, and obviously self interest differs from people to
Mhm.
people. Now, when it comes to my perspectivist view, I would say that since I value potential self interest actualization, if it's elongated in comparison to non-elongated or self interest, but rather current time self interest, then I would say I would have more justification to not consume the drugs, but that's only because it's compatible. It's more
Yeah.
compatible because obviously justification more justification is going to be determined off of the amount of compatibility when it comes to your self-interest. It's more compatible to not do drugs with my self-interest than to do drugs. So obviously I have more justification to not do drugs, or I'm morally motivated to not do
Yeah, but
drugs.
like, like in a case like obviously the thing that you said, I don't think there's a better justification because it's like dependent on the self-interest. I'm asking about like your self-interest specifically. Like
Yeah,
stands
I answered
dependently
it.
doesn't have to be. Yeah, it doesn't have to be stands independently. Stands dependently. You would say that there's a better justification for you not to do drugs rather than to do drugs, right?
Me, yeah.
Yeah, obviously. So like then that's the same thing here. The only thing that I'm saying is, well, you have two hypotheses: moon exists and moon doesn't exist. You have genuine scientific researches and epistemic access, which
Yeah, but I
says,
don't think you're
well, moon
understanding.
exists.
My bad to cut you off, but let me clarify.
Sure, sure, sure. Go ahead.
Moral justification is distinct from justification outside of morality, obviously. So that's just trivially true. Moral justification is distinct from any type of justification which exists outside of morality. So when you say you have justification to favor ice cream over cake, and you have justification, scientific justification at that, to for the likelihood of the moon existing, well, those are three different types of justifications. Where if you believe that the justification
Hmm.
for the cake and then the moon are the same, you can say those are two types of different motivation or justifications. So my moral answer is irrelevant. I've already given you my answer when it comes to the moon landing or the moon's existence, and then the favoring of ice cream over cake.
Hmm. But then, I'm just then not clear. How do you determine some justification proving like some fact, for example? What do you take like to be
Are
a
you
stands
asking my theory
independent
of
fact?
motivation and justification?
Not motivation, but like genuinely like your theory of justification, like how determine something
Depends on the
being a
scenario.
fact.
Yeah, so it obviously
Okay.
depends on the scenario. How I will
Yeah.
verify ice cream existing is distinct from how I will verify God existing.
Well, I mean, like, say for example, like moon existing. How do you verify that via like you can see the moon, right?
I mean, I wouldn't verify it like that, but sure.
Okay, no, it's just for example, obviously, but like, and then let's just say grass is green, and sky is blue. Let's just take all of them. Like
I
you
would just
can
use
see
priors.
them. Yeah, but what are the priors?
Priors are the consensus. The priors are my
Mm-hmm.
observations. Yeah, the priors are my
There we
observations of
go.
the
There we
grass,
go.
etc.
Consensus. There we go. Consensus. So
Yeah,
then
but the
let's.
consensus is all for observations though. Because I can't really tell whether or
Mm-hmm.
not my sensory experience is accurate. So I'm gonna and by the way, when I clarify this, that does not mean that I believe that this is just a strong motivation or justification. I'm just saying that in this instance, I would be fine with using this type of justification because I have no reason to assume that everybody's sensory experiences are flawed. But rather, I believe intuitively that they're accurate. Or even if they're not accurate intuitively, I would just accept them. Why? Because obviously I've been living life with the sensory inaccuracy, but hasn't done anything which stops my pleasure. So
Yeah. Well then, it's something. The consensus part was important, and I do agree with what you said. Like because you will not know whether your view is whether your sensory experience is flawed, and you need somebody to verify it, or
no,
some
I
consensus to
disagree
verify it.
because the consensus can also
Uh
be
huh.
flawed. I'm just saying in combination, these are fine things to use in a normal conversation. In a
Yeah.
normal conversation when it comes to justification of regular facts, such as the grass being green.
Yeah, but like that's the thing that I wanted to say. Yeah, I agree with that. That's also for sure. Like let
Yeah, but
in the.
there still exists no
Mm-hmm.
system of codification when it comes to justification outside of morality.
Wait, what did you say? I
There
didn't track that.
still exists no system of codification when it comes to justification outside of morality.
What do you think? What do you mean by codification? I don't know what that means.
Codification means to organize a set of features within a system. So there is no way to organize the strength or determine the strength of justification outside of morality. Because in morality, I believe that the strength of moral justification obviously is going to be determined off of how much compatibility it has with your self-interest. But outside of morality, I have my own way of determining the logical strength, but I don't see
Uh-huh.
yours. And then obviously we're still going to have to question P2 there.
Yeah, but like that's the point of P2. P2 is just based on empirics. That's the thing that I want to talk
Yeah, well,
about.
I'm
So
asking for
like,
the argument for P2, brother.
yeah. P2 is just empiric. So let me send you the studies that show it. But before I do, I just want to ask you because the thing P2 is saying is pretty trivial. But like, I just want to say when people say, for
I
example,
disagree with that.
you will see what I mean. So you ask a kid, 5 years old, doesn't matter. Kid, do you think moon exists? He'll probably tell, well, duh, it does exist, right? But like, and when you ask them then, do you think killing is wrong? Or like some basic, most basic norm, do you think killing is wrong? They're gonna say, well, duh, killing is wrong. Doesn't matter like whether you think it's subjective or objective. When they tell you when they show you how they feel about both things, you're gonna see that they feel the same way or that they have this same normative strength for moon and for killing. You see
Oh
what
my
I mean?
God. Look. So there's two things. One, I don't care about an irrational or almost completely irrational being, meaning at least not to the level of us. I don't care about an irrational being using rationality to determine which fact is stronger or which justification is stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, look, just to clarify, brother, the reason why they would say that killing is wrong, at least in my opinion, you can disagree if you want, is either one, because it's in their self-interest to follow the beliefs of their parents, and their parents believe that killing is wrong, or their parents taught them that killing is wrong, or secondly, they just possess a self-interest to not witness things that are scary, which is murder, the blood, etc.
Yeah.
Which well,
Wait, why did... No, unmute him. Who deafened this guy? Unmute him, bro.
yeah, I got deaf and mute angle. I'm done debating here, bro. Like,
Wallahi, it wasn't me.
No.
Wallahi, it wasn't me, by the way.
bro, like, yeah, like
I
who,
was not.
bro?
What?
Y'all niggas are weird.
Who did that, bro? Like,
Look,
I
who
was
did you
not.
even did
say
that? I'm
something?
middle of debating this guy, bro.
Did you say
Like, oh my
something while
god.
I was deafened?
No. I just
Yeah, yeah,
wait.
yeah. So look, in some, yeah. So to finish what I was saying, yeah. So it's just the case that obviously that's going to boil down to my egoist perspective, which would
Yeah.
entail a lack of a reductio, and then I would just like to reclarify this point. I don't care about, and I'm going to say this to Quince as well. I don't care about an irrational being making rational this, or at least making rational assessments. You're just
Yeah.
asking irrational being basically
Mhm.
irrelevant questions. Go ahead.
Okay, so the thing I disagree like that it's gonna be something in like self interest, something which is gonna be in
Why?
their self interest, because even I think even your view and every single view will boil
Oh,
down
also, let
to
me
I don't
clarify.
want suffering.
Wait, hold on. There's a distinction between wait. Oh, hold on. Before we do that, there's a distinction between intuitive self-interest and then conscious self-interest. Okay, so
Okay, sure.
whether it's conscious.
Who is doing that, bro? I'm in the middle of debating this guy.
Like, bro, these niggas are so weird, bro. Anyways, we
For
could say
real,
that they're
bro.
consciously following the orders of their parents or the beliefs of their parents, and their parents believe that killing is wrong. Or we could say that they're intuitively following the orders or beliefs of their parents, which will lead into killing being wrong. Either way,
Yeah,
supports my view because it's still self-interest, whether it's intuitive or self
yeah,
or conscious.
yeah.
And then,
Well,
yeah, what? Go ahead.
yeah, the thing, well, I disagree with that. I even think in your view and like in everybody else's view, when you say something like, I think this action is wrong, or something like this, and then you're gonna say something like, well, it's not in correspondence to my desire or my self-interest, and then when I ask you why, and then you give me another reason, then when I ask why, you give me another reason. I think it will eventually boil down to, I want to either A, suffering, or B, preserve happiness.
Yeah, they
In
want to
both
avoid
ways, I
suffering
agree with
because it's
that.
in their self-interest. Yeah, they want to avoid suffering because it's in their
Yeah, yeah,
self-interest, and then they want to preserve happiness because it's in their self-interest.
yeah,
And then
but
secondly,
it's
hold on,
uh
and
huh.
secondly, hold on, secondly, I believe that most people would actually say, well, it's just generally considered bad, therefore it's bad, which is completely fine. That's just what they consider. That's not. It ultimately boils down to their self interest because they have the self interest to be compatible with everybody else when it comes to morality. So they just call it bad because everybody else calls it bad, which is in their self interest to
Yeah, but
not
like,
witness murder. Or they could just
mhm.
say it's in my self interest not to witness murder, therefore it's bad. But go ahead.
Yeah, but like the thing that I'm trying to tell you is the fundamental basis of this self-interest or the fundamental basis of your desires is gonna be that you would want to avoid some form of suffering or want to preserve some
Well,
form of
yeah, whether
happiness,
it's
even in
personal
society.
suffering or a
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
consensus suffering, yeah, that's completely
yeah,
fine. That
yeah.
just boils back when you say the fundamental thing of your self interest. If all you mean to say is set X of your self interest, which includes five independent self interests, boil down to set Y of your self interest, which includes one self interest of avoiding suffering or preserving happiness, that's completely fine. Because why? Both set X and set Y are your self interests, which I believe Mirage is determined off of. So there seems to be no reductio there.
Okay, no, I think we've gone way past the point of reduction. I just want to like be clear on the pain and thing. And yeah, it's gonna be like this fundamental. If you agree that it's gonna be like this fundamental basis of the of this what you want to call egoism or like whatever view you hold. Yeah, egoism, like self-interest and everything. The thing that I'm just trying to tell you there is that's something is like, for example, the stance independent reason that I take to this is the sad reason that I take to be a stance independent reason, and this is the reason
Why?
why people say like these things are wrong or
Okay,
good
why
or
do you
something.
believe in stance independent though? That just presupposes
Okay,
moralism.
could you? Okay, sure. Like, I'm this suffering. The reason why stance independent is because this is like some form of fundamental qualia. I think it's like through evolution, we developed it like the same way like we develop how to
Develop what?
breathe, like the qualia like
I don't believe those are
pain and
equivalent.
suffering.
Uh,
Like
okay, no, wait, just to be clear. Yeah, the determination to avoid pain or attempt to avoid suffering is distinct from our qualia, which experiences suffering, brother. So we can
okay,
go off of our qualia as motivation for the self interest to avoid suffering or avoid pain, and that still be subjective.
I'll explain. So, do you think that even if you had no preferences, would you still know what pain feels like?
Well, just to be clear, yeah, that's completely fine. Look, you can experience
Mm-hmm.
pain, you can know pain, independent of whether or not you possess a preference or self interest. I'm saying that people who do possess self interest or preferences model them off of their qualia, usually, not in every single scenario, but usually, meaning that they can
Mm-hmm.
experience pain, they can have qualia for pain, whatever, and then model their self interest off of how pain feels and then attempts to avoid pain because of it's how bad
Mm-hmm.
it is or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think in you agree with me here, and just to wrap it up because I'm also gonna have to go soon, so me and you can like finish this like without having
But
to
like,
yap too much.
okay, I ain't gonna lie. Okay, look,
Oh, he got muted again. But I'm gonna kill somebody if they
look,
do
like, okay,
anything.
we're done. I'm dismissing that. I ain't gonna lie. We can continue it,
Yeah, them niggas is weird. What the fuck? Why are they doing that to him?
Quince, for so far, who do
bro.
you think was
See,
winning?
you're a weirdo, bro. God, like
To
you're
be
actually,
honest with you, I'm gonna be
you're
honest,
getting
bro.
toxic.
I
You
do
are a
think
weirdo,
so
see.
far that Infinity is winning.
Wait, what did you say, Quince? Who do you think
I
was
said so
winning?
far I do think that Infinity is winning.
Okay, then Infinity, GG's, man. We can save the recording here. It
Oh
was a
my
Wait,
great
wait.
god,
What'd you
thank
discussion.
say
God.
at? What'd you
We
say at
we,
the end?
we
I don't
so
want to
far
like
remember
have
him, bro.
something
He's not
slip in.
weird.